Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Thursday, June 12th, and what a time it has been for these Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, once again, we kind of go, a week or so without talking about this team, and all of a sudden they've won 12 of 14. They've swept the St. Louis Cardinals. They've won 5 straight series. They're sitting in a wild card spot. It has been probably the best stretch of play from these Blue Jays since we've started this podcast.
Baseball's hottest team is the Toronto Blue Jays. This is almost unthinkable given the way that discussions were, I don't know, about 7, 8 weeks ago. But since basically the turn of the calendar to May and now stretching into mid-June, these Blue Jays are legit. These Blue Jays are offensive juggernauts. These Blue Jays are winning ball games, and these Blue Jays are looking like, do I dare say it? A World Series contender, at least a playoff contender. This is the best Blue Jays team I think we have seen, at least since we made our way over to YouTube. And I think even dating back to like the 4-6-3 days, this might be the best we have seen the Toronto Blue Jays.
It's funny because I think that there was like part of us that probably expected them to be like the best team that we've covered on this podcast. I mean, obviously 2023 they make the postseason, but if you remember that season, I think there were plenty of complaints and a lot of, I don't know what you want to call it. Like there was obviously the offensive struggles, and we are of course in like a 2 week stretch that we'll see how things do go forward. But I think there's just been so many positives that with this team. Obviously, you talk about like the depth of the lineup coming through, the fact that they've been doing this with a large number of stars on the injured list, with 3 starters and 2 question marks in the rotation, right? Like they've really kind of turned it around. They figured it out. They get seemingly punched in the face like every game and are able to respond. Obviously, I think it's 21 comeback wins now after completing another one yesterday in St. Louis, and it's really just been incredible to watch them, and just kind of the spirit of the team I think has really shifted, and there's something different that's been brewing, that's been stewing in that Blue Jays clubhouse.
I mean, I think you kind of put it really eloquently. It's a 1 through 9 right now. The Jays' best hitter right now, obviously, is Alejandro Kirk. Their second best hitter might be Ernie Clement. Vladdy Jr. is crushing baseballs, but is hovering around an 800 OPS. Bo Bichette is crushing baseballs, hovering around a 760 whatever OPS, right? Anthony Santander has been hurt for forever. Andres Gimenez has come back and been a productive hitter, but he's only getting part-time playing time. There's guys from 1 through 9. You got Dalton Varsho on the IL. Miles Straw comes in and provides a ton of value himself. George Springer has taken a strong start, a drop off in production, and continued to succeed despite hitting a bump in the road. This might be George Springer's best season as a Blue Jay, which is crazy because he's in the second last year of his contract. He looked like he was cooked. He looked done as early as this spring, or rather, as recently as spring training. This is a Blue Jays team right now that is getting production, that is getting value out of everybody in the lineup. And the result has basically been the blossoming of the team turning into exactly what Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro had envisioned all along: a low strikeout team that defensively is really strong and produces offense.
Yeah, and you know what? I think one thing too, there was the slight criticism that, once things kind of really took off for them, I think was probably the A's series. Obviously they've won 5 straight series, but I think the A's one is kind of the one where things, really kind of started to click. And of course, there was well, let's see them do it against a good team, against a playoff contender. And they've answered with a series win against the Phillies, who are really good. They beat the Twins in a series, who they're going to be battling with in contention for the playoffs all year. And then they turn around and sweep this Cardinals team that's kind of been really good and has exceeded expectations themselves this year. Like it's been a really group of quality series victories, right? Like it's not just them catching a soft spot in the schedule, right? Like they haven't, been doing it against the A's and the White Sox and the Angels, and the great thing is that you kind of do have the schedule starting to soften up a little bit because as they go into the All-Star break, guess what are the three series going into the All-Star break? It's the Angels, the White Sox, and the A's. So, I think obviously you got to keep playing well against good teams. They've obviously got the Phillies coming up here to cap off the road trip. They've got the Diamondbacks who just swept the Mariners, but then it's the White Sox, and then Guardians, Red Sox, Yankees. Like it's obviously you're going to want to continue to do that against good teams. But what they've done by getting themselves to 8 games above 500 at this point is it gives you a little bit of a cushion. You can maybe afford to like drop a couple games in a row a series, whereas before every time they had lost like two or three in a row, you're back below 500 trying to battle back up, but now all of a sudden they have this cushion, they're sitting in a playoff spot, and the playoff odds are higher than they've been in over a year at this point.
You remember last year when we had that podcast, The Stretch to Save the Blue Jays season, and they went under 500 over that stretch.
Who was it? It
And
was like
what's
the White Sox, the Pirates,
it
and
was
and the
it was a
Angels, and it was
pathetic group. This has been the stretch that saved the Blue Jays season. This is the team that has gone out and become the story of the summer, really around Major League Baseball. And obviously, you've still got July and August, and you normally get kind of a team of the summer somewhere in there. Last year you got the Tigers were kind of that, and there's been other teams in the past, but like in terms of comparing this team to previous iterations, this team is more 2021 adjacent than 22 or 23 and certainly 24 adjacent. And what's crazy is they missed the playoffs obviously in 21. This year, this is a team that legit, if they have a good deadline, and it's crazy to even be talking about the deadline at this point because you kind of feel like that they're going to be buyers. If the Jays can go out and supplement the pitching core, the hitting is going to be good enough because of the length, because of the ability to hit the ball out of the yard, which is something that they haven't been doing for 24 to 36 months. All of a sudden, who knows how far this team could go?
yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, obviously, we've kind of done a little bit of the talk. Obviously, the starting rotation is going to be like the number one priority for them to figure out between now and the deadline, or the second half of the season, if you want to look at it that way. The starting pitching options, as currently the standings stand, aren't perfect. I think you look at the teams who are kind of on the edge of being like sellers, and you're hoping that they kind of fade a little bit in the next little while. I think you're looking at the Diamondbacks, you're looking at the Brewers, you're looking at the I don't know, like the Rangers maybe. Like those are the groups that the Braves who are 9 games under 500, and I mean Chris Sale is going to be the number one, I think, trade piece that's up.
If they deal him, I mean, there was a
If they,
report
yeah,
that he's not even
Morosi
on the
said
market.
on Jay's Central that they're not going to shop him, but there's of course still a few weeks between now and the trade deadline. I think 7 weeks still. So Sale would be kind of the ideal, or else you're looking at Merrill Kelly, Mitch Keller. That's if the Diamondbacks sell for Merrill Kelly, but other than that, it's like Mitch Keller. It's geez, like
Aaron Savale, if
Aaron
he's asked for a
Savali.
trade.
Like, are you going to go trade for Zach Eflin from the Orioles? The White Sox don't have anybody super interesting. Sandy Alcantara has, you know, not been great this season. Maybe that's a guy you want to take a shot on. The Rangers, Nady Eovaldi's there, but that's probably a team that is hoping that they get back into playoff contention. So, there's going to be teams that are going to fall out. There's going to be teams that are going to move. Of course, everything's going to change over the next 7 weeks, but it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of progress between now and the deadline.
Yeah, and I think obviously there's so much runway that we could be having a totally different discussion 6 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, even. So I think more than anything else, I think that it's more just that they've put themselves in this position with this incredible, incredible stretch. Um, since I think it was May 4th, um, believe they are the fifth. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I was looking at it yesterday, but either way, they're easily top five. And you'll have to forgive me for a moment as I kind of get my train of thought back on the rails here. But in their Barrios, Bassett, Gosman starts, they are like a 606 winning percentage team. They're a comfortable top five, nipping at the heels of several teams with World Series aspirations. It's two weak links in the chain right now. One, arguably, if you really believe in Eric Lauer, who
He's been serviceable. I think that you're comfortable with what he's given you, and how sustainable is it? Probably not super sustainable, but I think that that's probably a you can tie yourself to his results until they turn similar to what you did with Easton Lucas early in the year.
and also I think what's interesting or notable or worth acknowledging is beforehand, this was a team that had no margin for error because all of their eggs were in the defense and pitching basket. And of course, when you basically have three pitchers, one of them arguably in Jose Barrios, who knows if he's even, you look at the StatCast page and it's a lot of blue. And even to a certain extent, Gosman is like that. Obviously, Bassett's come back to earth a little bit. Like it's three guys you've had a lot of success with, but it's not like they've been infallible. So the margin for error has been negligible, but they're mashing now. Like we've got on our rundown, we've got Kirk as the first guy we wanted to talk about. I think that was as good a time as any. This guy might just start an all-star game, and Cal Raleigh also is in the American League. Is there is there a universe where he has the better first half because there's still about a month to go until the deadline, and he's been hitting 400 for the last 30 games or so. There's a chance that this guy, if he keeps hitting like this, has a 900 OPS and is hitting like 350 at the deadline, or rather at the All-Star break.
Cal Raleigh I was on the radio the other day, and we're talking about Kirk, and I'm like, wow, like Cal Raleigh has 26 home runs. Like, what the heck is going on with him? Like, we always knew that he was like this huge power threat, whatever. But I think the way that Kirk has kind of come on has been super impressive, right? Like, it's those two that have really kind of been like the top two catchers in baseball this year. And if you want to like single out a point in the Blue Jays season to kind of filter your searches from. I think you look at from the start of the Mariners series where they swept the Mariners, right, on May 9th. Since that date, Alejandro Kirk, 409 average, 460 OBP, 568 slug. That's a 193 WRC plus and a 1.9 WAR. He's walking more than he's struck out. Like the two strike hitting has just been
Like
super impressive, right? Like he's
incredible, a
he's
buck
been the best.
93. It's crazy. That's Otani-esque.
He's
That's
been
Judge-esque.
the best hitter in baseball with two strikes this year, and
That's
it's
incredible.
crazy. And I think it's kind of funny, just the way that you watch his at bats. Like I think the Romano walk off against the Phillies was he was sitting there, he was waiting for Romano to throw the fastball, right? And Romano slider foul off, slider foul off, slider foul off, and then he gets the fastball and he just drives it off the wall. Like his at bats have been so good, and I think if you want to go on your like a Kirk thing, because I know you're a huge like Kirk guy. Yeah, I'll let you do that. And it's just been like so crazy what he has been able to do after, a little bit of a slow start. I think the spring training was really good, really encouraging. And then he comes out and kind of, doesn't carry that over into the start of the regular season. But what he's kind of turned himself into this season, post extension has been really impressive. And I think, if you're looking at Blue Jays All Stars, he's got to be like the leading candidate. If you had to vote a team MVP, it's him.
For sure. Well, I just want to kind of touch on as well because there were signs, right? Obviously, to start the year, the ball was getting hit harder from him, and it was kind of like it felt like a bit of a ticking time bomb. But at the same time, we had a discussion on the podcast where we were like, is the Kirk extension a mistake because ABS is going to be coming in next year? We were like, a lot of his defensive value, and if that goes, you think he's betting on himself maybe. But then now he's hitting like one of the best players in Major League Baseball, and all of a sudden that contract is the best in baseball, maybe? Like maybe not the best in baseball because that's a big statement, but if you're not going to get $1 of excess value out of a Vlad extension for $500 million, then you're going to make up a ton of that excess value in Alejandro Kirk at 10% of that.
So Kirk gets extended, and it was 60 million, I believe 58 million, if you want to kind of have it right on the nose. And Cal Raleigh got extended shortly after for 105 million.
That's such a crazy like to time that extension the way it was. That's a heist.
It looks like a good deal. And obviously, you know what, this is it will it's a good player. He has like such a high floor, I think, which is part of why that deal at the time I thought was pretty good, a pretty safe deal. But what he's done is just absolutely insane as far as outperforming that. And it's the Kirk that we thought you were going to get when he came up and was an all-star in 2022. And then obviously things kind of fall apart. But basically ever since they traded Danny Jansen, he has been um one of the best catchers in baseball.
It's
And
so
there's
fascinating.
no debating how good and how valuable he is to this Blue Jays
So
team.
so this is going to be a little bit of kind of um I don't know exactly what the word I'm looking for is, but you know, obviously we're an analytics or sabermetric focused podcast, so we don't tend to talk about the intangibles. But do you think maybe the lack of Alejandro Kirk or the lack of Danny Jansen has helped Alejandro Kirk?
It's tough to say. It's tough to say without, like having that conversation. But, I do think he had so much stability entering this season, right? Like he the extension, he had the role was his basically. They basically bet on him by trading Danny Jansen. They bet on him by trading Gabriel Moreno all, 3 years ago at this point. Like they've made these bets on him, and I think that there is certainly something to having that contract, having that stability, and being able to like settle into yourself as the guy. And I think that's something that we've kind of seen, right? Like we've seen him show a little bit more emotion over this stretch in this season, and you can tell that there is a comfort level, and we're kind of seeing. I think it was who it might have been Caleb Joseph on the broadcast the other day. He's like, Alejandro Kirk, like this is the guy who you see in the clubhouse. Like he's starting to bring that out onto the field with him. And I think that's a level of comfort, and obviously the results are kind of going along with that. So I think that, the Danny Jansen trade certainly didn't hurt Alejandro Kirk and his comfort in being who he is on the field.
This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
We could keep moving on though. I mean, there's like so many guys who have been, instrumental to this stretch. I think, I pointed out to that like May 9th kind of date, and you look at that, I think since then Addison Barger has a 159 WRC plus, Ernie Clement 137, Bo Bichette 133, Tyler Heineman 193. The Tyler Heineman experience has been a little bit of a fever dream at this point. Like he's been a top 10 catcher by WAR this year in like 20 games. It's been crazy. But Ernie Clement, obviously, coming off a big game yesterday, the dude is just owning left-handed pitching. Like
Oh
he
yeah, he's been incredible. He's
has
been
been so good. Like, yeah, I think the defensive versatility, he's been doing it everywhere. I think, utility Gold Glove is basically his at this point, but just he's been so important to this team as a guy who, maybe nobody thought was going to be like this level.
if you'll allow me once again to, as we did a few weeks ago, to point to my friend of the podcast, Steve Fellon over at Sportsnet Stats. I'll see if I can find it. Here we go. Ernie Clement had 3 hits and a homer yesterday. His 1.198 OPS versus left-handed pitchers ranks third in the AL, trails only Aaron Judge, Paul Goldschmidt. This guy is raking against lefties.
Yeah, it's insane. Like he's been one of the best hitters in baseball against left-handed pitching, and one of the best defenders in baseball. Like he's second on the Blue Jays in WAR right now. And I think um, he probably won't be an all-star, right? Like it's kind of one of those things where he doesn't have the gaudy home run
Are
totals.
you sure about that?
I mean, he probably doesn't like qualify as a second baseman. Um, at third base, like he's, again, kind of behind some of the top players there. Like it would have to be a very specific set of circumstances. Think like, Santiago Espinal getting as a replacement for Jose Altuve back in the day, kind of something along those lines. But I think that there's like a little bit of a case there, which is something that
Well,
would be would have shocked you if you heard that before the season.
oh, for sure. But here's why I actually think that the Ernie Clement All-Star case, not the most outlandish thing. Blue Jays tend to get guys to the All-Star game when they're having good seasons. You think back to 21, 22, whatever it may have been, and the Jays sent a bunch of dudes. When the Jays are good and people care across Canada, the voting tends to help them with that. And it's not like there's really a obvious second base candidate in the American League unless I'm forgetting someone. And Ernie Clement has genuinely been all-star caliber. He's probably the best defender in baseball, at least a top five defender in baseball. And the way he's been hitting, I think over the last 15 games, he's got an OPS over 1,000. If he can just continue to be a productive enough hitter, get himself to a roughly league average or better hitter, baseball fans these days are smart enough, and the people that pick all-star teams are smart enough that he's gonna get love for his defensive value, and takes an injury here, an injury there. I think it's a possibility.
Here's I'm gonna poke a hole. I just looked it up. Ernie Clement does not appear on the All-Star ballot.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So he's either gonna be a write-in candidate or he's gonna have to be voted in by like the coaching staff that
All right. All right. New plan. New plan. Listeners of the Bird's Eye View podcast, we have a mission. Ernie Clement has
you're
been
gonna write him
snubbed,
in.
has been disrespected by the powers that be at Major League Baseball's front offices. This is an affront to our city. This is an affront to our country. This is an affront to Ernie Clement, a honorary Canadian, big hockey guy, big big local guy. He's from Rochester, not too far from Toronto. Listeners of the Bird's Eye View podcast, it is time for us to rally around 2025 AL starting second baseman for the All-Star game, Ernie Clement. Where's the All-Star game this year?
Atlanta.
Let's get Ernie Clement to Atlanta.
It's so funny because like if you go to you go to Fangraphs and you sort by second baseman in the American League, like Ernie Clement is listed as the number one second baseman by F4, and like he's not on the ballot because they just put like one player from each team, so Jimenez gets second base for the
This
Blue Jays and Barger gets
this is
third
an
base.
affront to our intelligence as baseball fans. We are being disrespected, as Toronto always is. It's time for Ernie Clement to be the AL starting second baseman at the All-Star game in Atlanta, Georgia.
It's funny because I think if you go back, right, like the Blue Jays have had a second base all-star in, I believe it's four of the last five seasons, or is it three of the last four? Because they went Semien, Espinal, Merrifield.
Like
So three of the last
they've
four.
been pumping them out, and they're pumping out another one, and they don't want you to know.
Oh man, it's been a great year. I mean, like, I think before the year in one of my bold predictions, I said Ernie Clement wins a third base Gold Glove. Um, I'm going to take the liberty of saying that I'm going to be correct when he wins the utility Gold Glove because he's played short, he's played first, he's played third, he's played second, and he's
He's
played them all
bounced around
extremely well.
everywhere, and he's
Like
been
he is,
excellent everywhere.
it's just been like quietly such a great year, right? And obviously, you look at it like it's only 4 home runs. But the way that he has been able to contribute so far, like it's been a really, really important part of this team, kind of finding their stride on offensively.
He's been behind Kirk. Like I said, like is he the second most important Blue Jay behind Alejandro Kirk right now? Just given the production that he's had, obviously Vlad's in the discussion and all the starting pitchers are in the discussion. But if you ignore all the obvious people, then Ernie Clement is the second most important Blue Jay.
Um, Interesting if you go, oh, this is not what I was expecting to search when I pulled up this filter. So I just did win probability added, Blue Jays leaders, and Ernie Clement is second last of the 18 position players.
This does not help. This does not help my
Sorry,
propaganda
sorry.
campaign,
I'm
Zach. I don't know what you're
we'll,
talking
we'll have
about.
to edit that out.
The most clutch player on the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't know. It's not Ernie Clement.
It has
But
been
it doesn't
Alejandro
mean
Kirk
that
though.
doesn't mean he shouldn't be an all-star.
No, he's been so good. Before we kind of move on, Barger, it's cooled off a little bit. Like he's not hitting a home run every single game like he was for a stretch there. But I think like they've kind of found their three-hole hitter, right? Like I think when Santander comes back, like you're not dropping Barger out of that role because he's been so good and he has the profile of a guy who's going to be able to stick in that role. And I think, as guys do come back, we're going to start to see him move around a little bit. But I think this is a guy that you can't take him out of the lineup for what he's given you.
If you recall over the last honestly couple years, we've been talking about who's the best left-handed hitter in Blue Jays history, and it's obviously Carlos Delgado, but it's basically a mishmash of a bunch of other people for second place. There has been basically a complete and total desert of left-handed hitting talent that basically represents middle of the order mashing ability in terms of basically Blue Jays history. And I think when Barger came up, I think we floated the idea of him being the second or third best left-handed hitter in Blue Jays history when it was all said and done. Obviously, with a lot of tongue in cheek. Might not be the case anymore.
Obviously, he's got a lot of ground to make up based on how last year went. Currently, of all left-handed hitters in Blue Jays history, with at least 100 plate appearances, he ranks. Hold on, filter is loading. Addison Barger currently ranks 42nd with a 94 WRC plus. So he's got a lot to overcome. But however,
Okay.
this includes last year where he struggled, right? Like if you were to take his 126 WRC plus this year and just plop it onto the list, he would be the sixth most proficient left-handed hitter in Blue Jays history with 100
And
plate
and
appearances
and that's also including a lot of the early season stuff. I don't know what his WRC plus is since about May 7th, May 8th,
since May
whatever it
9th.
may
It is
be,
159.
which would be
First. You know what's funny though? Carlos Delgado, second. Fred McGriff,
Fred McGriff.
first, 152 in his time as Blue Jay.
That
Hall of
makes
Famer.
sense. That
Hall of
makes
Famer Fred
sense.
McGriff. Yeah.
That does make sense.
All right. Anybody else you want to hit on the positive side? Obviously, Barrios, Gosman, Bassett. I think we kind of all know what they are, what they've been. Barrios has been really effective. Kind of since that May 9th date, he's 2.75 ERA since then. However, the strikeouts have not necessarily been there, but I mean,
Stunned, I tell you,
he's
shocked.
he's working with what he's got, and he's been really effective. Gosman's kind of come around with the splitter. We talked about that with Thomas Hall. Eric Lauer, yeah, same thing there, really good. Like the bullpen, Yariel, Brendan Little, Hoffman still, is it's a homer. It's the home runs have really hurt him, but I think you're still confident there. Positives that you want to talk about before we get into like the cloud hanging over the team right now.
I think that you've basically touched on everything. I think basically the hitting has been the driving force. And that's what you need to do to be a successful team. You got to mash. The name of the game is scoring runs, and the Blue Jays of late have scored runs in bunches.
All right. Circle of trust, really quick. Circle of trust right now.
Hoffman, despite the
Yep.
ERA.
Yep.
Yariel Rodriguez, I think, is my number
First
two.
career save, really exciting for him the other day to get that done. I think, we were just talking about like Blue Jays all-time save lists, and now he's on it alongside Yusei Kikuchi, Roy Halladay, Dave Stieb, Marcus Stroman, Yariel is on the list.
Beyond that, Brendan Little,
Yep.
Mason Fluharty.
Yep.
Let's think who else. Can we put Braden Fisher in there?
I think you should. Really interesting piece from Ben Clemens at Fangraphs about Braden Fisher and just like how he's kind of streamlined his pitch arsenal before like he'd kind of been all over the zone in the minors, but this year he has been like very consistent with where he is attacking, like fastballs high, sliders low and away, curveballs even lower and away, and just it's helped him. I think he has the highest strikeout rate on the team. So I think if that's a guy you want to put in your circle of trust, I am not going to argue.
You know what's so interesting is, we're rhyming off all these names in the circle of trust. Jimmy's hurt,
Yep.
Sandlin's hurt. Who else is? I mean, Ryan Burr last
Burr,
year obviously hasn't
yeah,
pitched yet this year, really in a meaningful capacity. Has he even pitched at all? I don't think he has. But obviously last year was pretty effective for the Blue Jays and
yeah.
figured to factor into this bullpen again, and obviously has not. I'm trying to think who else would be in that
I
discussion.
mean,
And I'm sure there's others I'm forgetting.
right now the bullpen, we've named pretty much everybody in there other than Chad Green, Eric Swanson, and then Spencer Turnbull is also in the bullpen.
Well, what's crazy too, I mean, those are two dudes that were really important parts of the bullpen not that long ago.
Yeah. You think 2023 postseason, Eric Swanson and Chad Green were like key members of that bullpen.
So fascinating. That
Yeah,
life of a reliever, man.
it's a tough one. It's a tough one for sure. Um, it's also a tough life for starters sometimes, as in Bowden Francis, who
I sensed this was where we were headed.
yes, and it's been, I think the topic du jour, the thing that everybody wants to talk about right now is what they're going to do with this rotation spot, and it's kind of funny because Bowden Francis has like filled his rotation spot this year, whereas there's a rotation spot that hasn't been consistently filled. But Bowden Francis obviously, has the worst single individual WAR of any pitcher in baseball right now. Leads the league in home runs allowed, and has just generally been fairly inconsistent in being able to work deep into games and to consistently get outs. So, what is your thoughts on what they should do with this rotation spot?
So it's obviously not working as things stand. Um, Last year, obviously, he had a ton more success, but anyone could have told you that he wasn't going to sustain a buck 70 something BABIP last season. Obviously, that was going to come back to earth, but it's come back in a certain way that even this is probably you couldn't have predicted this. And there's been some Manoa comps. I don't think that's necessarily fair to Francis because I don't think he ever elevated himself to the degree that Manoa had. I think last year Bowden Francis was a pleasant surprise, and even coming into this year was like a five starter for the Blue Jays. Was never really penciled in as anything more than maybe a four. So to me, I think the answer is you got what you could out of Ben Francis. And as things stand, isn't working. They're going to continue to run with him, which might just be because of the lack of other options. But I think your best bet probably when Manoa or Scherzer or whoever else is at a stage that you're comfortable with them or healthy, then it's probably Francis that goes down to AAA, tries to get himself right, and is hopefully back by maybe like August or maybe the stretch run, right? Like, I just think that unfortunately, the clock has just maybe struck midnight on him. And I think maybe the carriage has turned into a pumpkin, you know? To lean into that metaphor a little bit more. I think
Yes.
Francis has been a really good story for the Blue Jays. Don't forget, last year was a graveyard of pitching development stories for the Blue Jays. So to have Bowden Francis be effective as he was, even to start this year, was pretty effective.
Yeah, he what was it, his second start of the year? He was like, oh my God, he's doing it again. He's like almost worked
Exactly.
a no-hitter again.
So I don't think that I have an issue with what they've gotten into him, but I think it's clear that you need to find a new solution. I don't know who you can go out and acquire at this point. I don't know if Aaron Savale, I know we mentioned him earlier, he's asked for a trade. It just feels like maybe a easy low-hanging fruit, but even at that, like the answer isn't apparent, but it's obviously not Bowden Francis.
It's a really complex conversation, actually. I think when you like really dive into it, because there's so much that goes into it. I think if they had better options at this point, like they would have turned to those already, whether that would have been, a Jake Bloss staying healthy and figuring it out, Adam Macko being healthy. Obviously, he had a good start at AAA the other day. I think the command was a little inconsistent.
He's
Um,
also lined up, I think, on the same day
the
as
same day,
Francis.
which everybody talks about. Oh, they probably did that on purpose, and they probably did. But I think the Adam Mako thing is interesting because the command is inconsistent was inconsistent as he works back from a meniscus surgery, and Bowden Francis. I think part of the biggest issue for him has been the command being inconsistent. So is Adam Mako going to offer you better results than Bowden Francis? Maybe, perhaps. Obviously, I think we are pro Adam Macko. Of course, a little bit of CanCon would be fun, would be really fun guy to watch pitch for the Blue Jays. Um, and I think he's going to be an effective major leaguer eventually. It's just, I think he might need a little bit more time. Like, I don't think you want to run him out there. And I think there are a couple more starts for him in AAA to kind of prove that. I don't think they're going to rush him anyways. One thing that, Bowden, he got the support of like everybody there, right? Like the starting pitchers came out and said that he needs to be at the majors. Pete Walker was on Blair and Barker saying that he thinks Bowden is close. And of course, Pete Walker's not going to say otherwise publicly, but one thing I think is interesting too is like Pete Walker, obviously a very, very good pitching coach who has helped a lot of guys. He is at the major league level, right? Like, no offense to Drew Hayes in AAA Buffalo, but like, wouldn't you rather Bowden, work through his issues with Pete Walker with the major league pitching staff or coaching staff? Like, it's really complex, and I think one thing though, um, there does need to be a change. Obviously, you can't keep running him out there if it keeps going poorly, right? So I think, as Scherzer comes back, Scherzer starting for Buffalo on Friday. I think you're right. Like you kind of see what happens there, and then you make a judgment call once he's ready. Um, and then you kind of let Bowden figure it out, like maybe get away. Last year he went down to AAA and figured out a bunch of stuff, right? So it's not like there isn't a precedent for him to have done that before and come back and be really effective. So I think there's a lot of options. I think sticking him out there again, like not it's not ideal, but it's kind of like where they have to be right now.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of other options. Um, a idea to float by you. Scherzer gets back. Development list for Francis? Is that a possibility? Is that something that you would consider?
Yeah, I think you could, like, you just send him to Dunedin and you let him work there. I do wonder like if the AAA competition would be good for him. Like just I mean, obviously I'm not a major league development coach or anything like that, so I don't know what would be the benefit of seeing him pitch in AAA versus pitch behind the scenes at Dunedin. I think for him, maybe the development list would be a good idea because it's maybe not about the competition. Like maybe it's about like him getting right, and then you bring him to Buffalo, and then kind of go from there. I wouldn't necessarily hate the idea all around.
Just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah. So to conclude on the Bowden conversation, there's no easy answer, and I do hope we see
And
Adam
good
Macko.
luck.
And yeah, exactly. Um, I do hope we see Adam Macko eventually. One thing I did want to mention was Lazaro Estrada has been like exceptional the last couple months since May. He's been, sub 3 ERA. The strikeouts haven't been huge, but he's been really effective. So like there's a potential guy there. Obviously he's at AAA. So maybe that's an option that they want to turn to if he has continued or if he continues to pitch really well. He had another really good start last night. So another potential guy there, but we can kind of keep on going with some of these farm system stories. Let's start with Trey Savage. Gets the promotion to Double A after 4 Vancouver starts. Unfortunately for the folks in Vancouver, only one of those came in Vancouver. But yeah, I think it's Double A is kind of where he's belonged all along, and this puts him on a really interesting track.
So we talked about this obviously in the group chat about like the timeline. And I also think it was Keegan Matheson that mentioned it right after the promotion. The chances of seeing him in the major leagues, non-zero at this point. Maybe not a high, but if he succeeds at Double A and makes about 10 starts, that puts him at about August, gives him about a month to pitch in Buffalo. And obviously a lot of the machinations of him developing into a pitcher are going to happen at Double A. And then it seems like a possibility, especially if the Blue Jays are still looking for an answer in the rotation.
Yeah, if Scherzer, Manoah, and Francis can't like kind of get a hold of those like last 2 rotation spots, I think you said it's or Keegan Matheson I guess said non-zero. I was listening to At the Letters and Ben Nicholson Smith put it at 15%. Arden disagreed, putting it at like 1%.
I mean, 15% is a super aggressive number.
It would be, man, what a story. If he got to the major league, it would just be so incredible. I can't imagine like the hype around his debut and what it would be like for him to go from, single A
The whole
Dunedin
system. He
to
did the
in
whole
in one
system in a
year.
year.
Chase Burns actually currently making his AAA debut right now. Obviously, a little bit of a higher pick than Trey Savage, but I think Savage was maybe considered a little bit more pro ready. Obviously, what Burns has done is ridiculous in his minor league time, but Savage has been equally as ridiculous. So, really interested to see kind of how they handle him at Double A. I think that there's going to be a little bit less of like an elevator for him at Double A, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's going to be as much of a push for him to
He can he can
necessarily.
he can get comfortable in Manchester.
I would say so. Now, it is a possibility that he goes out there and continues to strike out the world, and
Yeah.
the calls continue to move him on up. But he'll have to force the Jays' hand in a
Yes.
way that
Yes.
he kind of was expected to move along in Florida and Vancouver. I also think we should give some love to Cal Steven, who had another good
Yeah.
outing. He could be on the way up Double A soon as well, although maybe not quite the accelerated timeline of Savage, but like the pitching in the Blue Jays system right now. We said it before we hit the record button. This is the most excited, most public outlets have been about the Blue Jays farm system since 2019,
I mean,
and
what
that
was
was
the
the Vlad era. This is a totally different beast.
what was the headline on that Baseball America story the other day?
That
Pulling it
wasn't
up
the
here.
that wasn't the Arjun Namala. That was
No,
the Arjun Namala. This is
here.
what stars look like. Was something
It's
totally different.
Blue Jays farm system source, especially on the mound. Headline of a Baseball America article. So
That's exciting to hear.
Yeah, it's so funny how things have changed in a year from them, everybody got it having to go under the knife, and now it's like, man, all these guys, and you think at like the lower levels, like Johnny King is set to be like on a rocket ship here, I think. I don't think that we're going to see him like in Vancouver this year, but like there's so much hype kind of building there. Grant Rogers and Jerron Watts Brown have been exceptional, and they already earned their promotions. It's just a really exciting time. We're going to see Gage Stanifer tonight, his first time, pitching without Trey Savage. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Yeah, just like wild how things have turned out there.
And don't forget, right? The Jays are still sans, like, obviously Landon Moraes has started to make his way back,
Yeah,
but that's another guy that was under the knife. Ricky Tiedemann obviously has been
yeah,
under the knife. Like, he's gonna make his way back. Not a development story in the same way, but I mean, we mentioned Alek Manoah earlier. It's not like
yeah.
he's necessarily up there in age either, right? Like, this is still a guy that was drafted in what, 2019? So, not obviously not in the same discussion, but the pitching, as much as everything that goes up must come down. Well, everything that goes down evidently also comes back up.
Excellent segue by you. Alek Manoah drafted in 2019 in the first round. Um, we have recently gotten another member of the 2019 draft class to get the call. And that is, of course, Will Robertson, who was recalled to join the big league team in basically his hometown of St. Louis, like very nearby to his hometown. He grew up a Cardinals fan. Disappointing that he didn't get to get in against them, but another one of these like positive development stories this year. Like I know he's 27. I think you look at like a Nathan Lucas, right? Like this kind of not everybody develops at the same rate. Will Robertson has been, a really nice story, and I think very well deserved for him to get the call here.
Yeah, this is probably a little bit more of almost like a throw in a bone situation. Like, you got Luke Perfito on the 40 man. You have to add Robertson to the 40 man, but he's deserved it, right? He's been so electric at AAA.
Yeah,
He's
the three home
been
run
there.
game off Frankie Montes.
Like, has he been the best hitter for the Bisons?
I
I'd
think
say
so.
that's probably a
Yeah,
fair statement. Um, like, this is probably a guy that deserved a shot at the big leagues and was going to get added to the 40 man at some point. He's long since Rule 5 eligible.
yeah.
Um, so to get him a chance to be at the big league club, to get a chance to potentially contribute. I mean, maybe we see him in the Phillies series. Maybe he gets a start in there. Wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprising. I mean, you found time for a guy like a David Schneider, and you found time for other guys to just kind of make their way in the lineup. I don't really see a reason to believe that you can't make an opportunity for Will Robertson, and he's gonna get some chances. He's not necessarily gonna be up here for an extended period, but he'll get a kick at the can here, and I don't think it'll be the last we see of him. Even if he's really orc depth at this point,
Yeah.
I
I
I
mean,
still think that we're gonna
I
get a shot
think
at him.
the thing about this is like this is kind of the like baseball stories, like the individual personal stories that you really like to see, right? Like this is a guy who's been in the minor league since 2019, right? And he has, kind of gone through the grind. He's been at every level. They were talking about it on the Canadians broadcast last night. Like Will Robertson is one of, I think, like seven players who played both at Vancouver when they were a complex league and a high A team. So, like that just kind of shows you like how long he's been in the minor system. But like I mean, I think, just about at ball results. I, pulled it up here, but like a 53.6% hard hit rate, by certain calculus. I know there's different kind of ways to look at it, but Fangraphs has it 53.6. He posted a career best max EV earlier this year with a 114.8. And then, the average exit velocity has been 93.6 for him this year. So like just really encouraging. And I think, there's been like this weird thing where he hasn't gotten in against lefties this year. He hit a double off of Edmonton's own Eric Sabrowski on rehab the other day. So, kind of fun there. But I think it's interesting because last year and the year before he actually had reverse splits where he was better against lefties. And this year he's just mashed right-handed pitching, but he hasn't really gotten the opportunity to hit lefties. So, it's probably too much of a breakdown for Will Robertson, but like it's a fun story and a guy who has, kind of earned his shot, and it's nice to see him get rewarded with the opportunity here.
Yeah, definitely think we'll be seeing maybe not lots of him, but we'll be seeing him.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've kind of covered everything Blue Jays. Is there any other, Scherzer starts Friday, like anything you're looking for from that?
Health? Is it too
Yes.
much to say? Just do not do not
Yes.
destroy your thumb, please.
That'll be a fun atmosphere in Buffalo too for him. I am sure that they'll really enjoy having him
That'll
pitch
be
there
that'll be
in
that'll be
in a
fun
Bison's jersey. So
for sure. Not wouldn't be the worst. The Jays are still on the road, right? I mean, wouldn't be the worst way to spend a Friday night.
yeah, yeah, no, 100%. Before we go, a couple other things like I wanted to talk about. We do love our CanCon here. Denzel Clark. I wanted to bring up
Ah,
this catch that he made the other day. I think one of the greatest catches of all time against the Angels the other day, robbing Nolan Chanuel. He gets up and like just on his backhand, like just incredible, like freakish athlete stuff.
super insane. And the best defender maybe in baseball, or the second best defender in baseball based on the call it the rate stats. How cool is it that you've got Dalton Varsho as one of the elite defenders in baseball, and you've got Denzel Clark, a Canadian, as one of the elite defenders in baseball. PCA kind of ruins the trifecta there,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But super cool for Canada to be represented so strongly, for really Toronto to be represented
Yeah.
so strongly among those players.
It's
That's an important part of a 2026 WBC team all of a sudden.
Yes. It's incredible because you look at like the outs above average and he is in the top 8 in baseball with 8. However, he's only played 136 innings in center field and everybody else above him or around him has played 500 or more.
Yeah,
Like
he's a
it's insane.
monster out there.
Like I
And
I
that
know.
catch too in Los Angeles, I think back to what 2012 or 13 when Mike Trout makes that
Yeah.
incredible catch, almost in the exact same spot.
Yeah. Yeah. There's maybe a little bit of a difference between Mike Trout and Denzel Clark, but
We
Denzel
don't need
Clark
to. We don't need to. We don't need to.
Denzel Clark, like just the like you think about the Orioles catch too, where he like full sprint right into the wall, makes that play again on his backhand.
Destroys
He
it. Gets
makes the
absolutely
catch in
drilled.
Toronto. I know the bat hasn't really been great so far. Like I think it's a strikeout rate north of 50%. But like just like the electric, like you took like I've been putting on A's games to watch because of what this guy does
He's
in center field.
he's making Sportsnet Central's AM show. You got 30 minutes of less. You got 24 odd minutes of content, and you're hunting Oakland Athletics highlights because of this kid. That's crazy.
It's a really cool story, really awesome, and hopefully he continues. Like if he, this is probably going to be a guy that we're going to be seeing making these catches for like 10 years, and it's going to be him against Dalton Varsho for the Gold Glove for years to come. It's going to be really fun to watch those battles for sure. Hopefully, he's able to get the stick going a little bit, so there's some staying power.
Here's hoping.
All right. Last thing from me. Obviously, this weekend is the beginning of the College World Series, notable for the Toronto Blue Jays because they, of course, are picking eighth overall. I don't think there's not a ton of like draft eligible or like top 10 prospects that are going to be in Omaha this weekend. Cade Anderson is a guy at LSU. He's going to be there. Iva Arquette at Oregon State, Brendan Summerhill at Arizona, Wewa Aloy at Arkansas. Like those are, probably the main four that are going to be, in contention that you could like maybe see the Blue Jays picking. I think, it's unlikely that they get a Anderson or a Arquette, but Summerhill maybe Aloy if he continues to play really well. Going to be, College World Series. It's so much fun. The atmosphere in college baseball is so good. So worth tuning in if you're interested in some of these draft guys and kind of seeing a different. It's a really nice field. It's kind of wide open, and we'll kind of see how it all plays out.
Definitely keep an eye on that. Lots of fun, obviously. I mean, Zach, you're the college baseball guy here. I won't pretend to be a super college baseball head, but I do know that the Blue Jays, with the eighth overall pick, will certainly be keeping a close eye on that.
Also, Arkansas's leadoff hitter, Montreal's own Charles Davalon, Chucky D, as I heard him referred to earlier today. really, really fun story there too. I think he at the beginning of the year he had more home runs than he did strikeouts, but he's going to be a draft eligible guy too, a Canadian. He's probably going to be the top Canadian born draft pick in this year's draft. So, some more CanCon there to keep an eye on.
Someone the Blue Jays could target, you think?
He's certainly their style of player as far as like he walks more than he strikes out, has good strike zone control. The power kind of did play up a little bit this year at Arkansas. I think, he's not your prototypical leadoff hitter, but he's probably going to go around the third round. So we'll see. I think he's a Blue Jays type of player, but in the third round, we'll kind of see how that all
Keep an eye
falls.
on him. Keep an eye
Yes.
on him.
He'll be he's the new Edouard Julien. All right. Well, I believe that is going to do it for us here, and we are going to run. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View Podcast. If you're listening along on the podcast provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jory is at J Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_. Thank you so much for listening.